Welcome to another episode of Bridging the Gap podcast, where we bridge the gap between business, technology, and people. Today, I've got Justin Johnson with us, and we are going to dive deeply into AI and integrating AI into your business and how a lot of those facets change what you're doing in the business, enhance what you're doing at the business, and maybe fundamentally make you think a little differently about what you're doing in the business. Justin, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully we'll have a good discussion here. I mean, there's a lot of places to take it, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I think the phenomenon that is AI and all the loadedness that comes with those two letters, I think if you talk general consumer, general user, they don't even really understand it or know what it is, maybe even scare them a little bit. But I think there's even an irony that in the business world, they too don't know what it is, maybe scares them a little bit. But at the same token, they got that FOMO, like, oh no, better get it into our business because we've got to have AI. And yet you say, like, I get this, like, we just need AI. And I'm like, awesome. What's that mean to you?
Yeah, exactly. Can you even spell it, right? Like, how do
Right.
you
Yeah.
spell AI? So
What's the number for 911?
exactly. Yeah, it's interesting too because you see it like I'm an older guy, but I'm not this old. But back in the day, computers didn't exist in companies, right? Like you went, you worked with like pen and paper or typewriters or whatever else. And so when there was that revolution, I think it was like late 70s, early 80s, where computers started making their way into the office space, everybody said, okay, we have to have computers because they make us faster and they can let us do these things that we couldn't normally do. But what they didn't realize is, there's probably a core contingent of your company that doesn't even know how to type, right? It's just not a skill that was as prevalent. And
Yep.
we're kind of in that same boat today where everybody's saying, we need to use AI, we need to use AI. And then there's just folks that just quite frankly don't know how to use it just because they haven't, because they have fear of it. There's definitely a gap. And that's what we have to address, I think, when we look at AI transformation in organizations.
Well, and I think with that, I personally believe there's a lot of AI hype. I mean, that's just, we know that there's a lot of AI hype, but I think there's a bit of a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that bubble's going to be as big as it was with the .com bubble, but even with that one, I think there's a similarity in it of like, well, the .com bubble had the big, Silicon Valley boom and everybody was, making a lot of money. A lot of stuff didn't exist. But when the bubble burst, the internet didn't go away. If anything, we had the foundational layers of like, oh, this is now what everyday consumers are really going to learn to use out of it. And then honestly, you get all the social media stuff that came as a different podcast altogether.
Yeah, we're not doing that one. So yeah.
And I think you're going to have the same thing with the AI. Like there is a
Yeah.
bit of an AI bubble, but when it bursts, it's not like, ooh, well, AI's gone. That was fun. It's like, no, you end up with all this foundational aspect. And I think that's where we're teeter-tottering right now is, and I'm not even worried about the lay consumer because, again, I think that's a whole other podcast of itself. But with these businesses, they don't know what they don't know. That's kind of the problem. That's where I think that FOMO, that fear of missing out of what it is, because they see their competitors or just other people in general in the space using it. And I think we have those in that pendulum who go, I don't know, we just got to get it in here. I don't even know how. But then we have the others who feel like, it may be a square peg and we are going to force it into this round hole, but by God, we're going to get AI used. And I think that's where some of the people problem comes because both ends of that spectrum, most of it is like either I don't know what it's going to do to my people or I'm going to get rid of my people because look, I'm so much more efficient with AI. And I think that's in of itself a huge gap because I mean, I've said this in other podcasts. I do think AI will fundamentally change, entry level positions and all the things that we can automate. I think we should automate. And if AI gets us automated, great. But what I think we're going to have is some of these people whose jobs were that data entry, that data organization, that, let me do some of this, that, or the other thing that realistically was automatable, but no one had the skills or the money wasn't available to do it. Well, now AI makes that. I think people are going to have to shift their thinking of like, well, what is the real value I'm bringing to the company? That's their personal shift. But I think that's also a top-down shift of, but what is the real value we can get out of the people? Because if it's, I say this for my developers, and I'll hand it back to you. I tell my developers, if you think the value that you're bringing to me is put code you're outputting, well, that's not the value. That is the output of the value you've already done. It was the critical thinking and the problem solving and all the analytical skills you've already applied to whatever was brought to us. The code was just the resulted output of that. I mean, we need it, but AI just makes the code go faster. I think that's why I tell my developers, lean into the AI, but it's your guardrails. You're guiding the AI. It's just doing it a lot faster for you. So it's a shift in how you think about what it is. Like AI shouldn't take your job. AI should make your job better and faster, maybe more efficient.
Yeah, I think that's a great statement, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. And so, in my day job, I'm in the health insurance space. Like that's the industry that I'm in, and we're looking at doing a AI transformation for the company, and I'm kind of leading that effort there with a handful of others. And the statement that I want folks to hear me say and get annoyed with, and I think you're kind of hitting on it. And the reason I want them to get annoyed with it is just because I think it's so important that I'm going to be saying it so often, is that any type of large AI transformation at a company is going to be 98% cultural and 2% technology, right?
Yep.
The technology is the easy part. The hard part is everything else you just described around that perceived value. And, talking about junior level roles, my oldest son is a sophomore in college, okay? And so he'll be coming out in 2 years-ish, give or take, and entering the job market. He's a computer science major. And so I also teach a AI engineering course through a company called Overclock Accelerator. I teach for them as well. And I taught that class the first time, saw the response, saw how it worked, saw how engineers were able to use AI to go faster. And I walked across the hall to my son's room and I said, you've got to change what you're doing. Not change your career, not
Yep.
change your major, but you've got to change what they're teaching you. Like you've got to add to that because colleges are a good bit behind. Like that's a
Yeah.
statistical thing. And it's like if you don't get ahead of this, like your first couple of years are going to be really rough once you graduate.
Oh, that brings two points to me that I think are fascinating. And again, I hate that I kind of keep referencing stuff I've referenced, but it's so apropos.
Mm-hmm.
Stanford was sending out surveys, I believe, to alumni and businesses they've worked with because you just nailed it. Like the colleges who are putting these people out into the workforce are, and I think maybe this is a good thing, they're realizing that they are ill preparing them for what true entry level looks like today,
Mm-hmm.
especially in computer science. But I mean, I think this is not just a computer science problem. It's just ill prepared for what is the tool set available to you today,
Yeah.
and did we prepare you for it? I mean, it would almost be akin to going like, well, you're going to be a math teacher, but we only taught you algebra. Like, there's so much more you could have
Exactly.
done, but we only
Yeah.
stopped you right here. Like,
Yeah.
that's as far as we're going to really go. There's
Yep.
more you could know and should know to be the best at what you're doing. One of the other ones I said, and it was kind of like the other developer aspect. It was like, it's a tool shift. And what I was really using with them was like a carpenter, or let's say a framer, a house framer.
Mm-hmm.
They used to do it with a hammer and a hand holding like the same result. Well, now they have a nail gun, bam, 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 much, much faster, same result. Well, look how much more efficient, and they can build more houses and move to the next one. Like their job didn't change. The tools available to them changed.
That's right. That's right.
So they just have to make sure that you embrace it. Because if you're going to be old school and like, well, I don't want to deal with that pneumatic, blah, blah, blah. I mean, yeah, you can still keep doing your job. And this is one of the statements I made to some people because I think there's a spectrum on this as well. Either you're going to be replaced entry level job, which is again what we just said, college needs to better prepare you. I think there's the other end of that pendulum, though, that there's some people go, well, AIs, I'm not going to deal with that AI thing. I don't need to worry about that AI thing. And it's almost like they're just going to put their blinders on and pretend like it's not there. And I told literally a developer at another company, no, he's not even a developer. He's a network engineer.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, not worried about AI. We're plugging in things in ports and everything else. I was like, yeah, but that's how often are you legitimately plugging something into a port or swapping out a switch? Like that's not really the core thing you're doing. You're doing configurations and thinking about security concerns and all these other things that are periphery to it, but really more core. He's like, still, I'm not worried about the AI. Well, my argument to him was, okay, maybe AI specifically doesn't replace you, but I bet that next network engineer who knows everything about AI and can do your job better
That's right.
will replace you.
That's right. 100%. So going back to the college thing real quick, and then we can move off of that. Like I was actually having lunch with a guy, a buddy of mine, who sits on a education board for a college here in North Carolina, and I won't say which one just because of the next statement, but he's at the board. They're talking to some of the instructors. The instructors are kind of coming in, or professors, I think is actually probably the better term. Professors are coming in and saying, here's the curriculum, here's what we're teaching. And the friend of mine asked, well, how are you thinking about addressing AI, right? Because these were computer science professors. The professor's response was, well, I don't know. How would you like us to address it? And I'm like, doesn't that feel backwards, right? Like, shouldn't the higher education like be leading that? That just feels a bit weird to me. But the other thing I think that really goes with what you're saying is there's definitely fear, right? And I see it in developers, right? And it's kind of hard sometimes to quantify what that fear is. Some of them are sure, AI is going to come for my job. I'm not going to have it, et cetera, right? I think others that I've seen, there's a fear of learning new things, right? I mean, that's a thing that some people have. But then I think for some folks, there's a fear of letting go, right? Because when you say, hey, Cursor or Claude or whatever else, go write this thing for me. You're not touching the keyboard. Your hands off. You have to let go and trust that it's gonna go properly. And interesting thing that I've seen there is, the handful of years back, it was everybody was big on like, let's do test driven development, and you have to write tests before you write your code and all this and all that. And some folks really adopted that. Some folks didn't.
Failed to green. Failed to green.
Exactly, failed to. That's right. And so, then you see it too, where you inherit code bases or you start working with code bases and you say, oh, what's your test coverage? And like, I don't know, like 20% or something like that. We were too busy building features.
Yep.
Well, I'm seeing a shift in that, right? Like the testing is more important now because it's like an extra layer of trust for the code that AI is writing, right? And if you can get all of your tests to pass green, then hey, this is probably pretty good and it probably didn't break everything else. And yes, sure, there's caveats there, but
Sure.
I think it's a safer way to test it. And you get it. Like, I think we've talked about this before. I think the word vibe coding is a bit dirty. Like I don't necessarily like vibe coding. I kind of like the AI assisted or AI engineering. Like I kind of like that a little bit better. When you look at that, what my level of comfort from, let's say, 6 months ago to now is like an exponential growth because the models are getting better. We're using it more and more, so the models are learning more and more how we want to use it. Like we're getting higher level of trust. I mean, it's probably safe to say daily there with some of the things that are going on, and I think developers need to kind of understand that.
Well, it's funny you say that because the trust accelerator there, I think that's one of the things that the trust acceleration coupled with, I do actually go back to the TDD side of things, just because I've been on the TDD bandwagon and I've also fallen off of it real quick. Because if you're in a, that how was it Facebook used to put it? It was a like move fast and break things or whatever.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a startup, that's still their mentality. Like, look, man, I love the fact that you're testing, but we got to get features out. We're
That's
first
right.
market, or we're fighting competitives or whatever. Like writing tests is not value. They don't. It's not.
You don't get paid for writing tests. You
You
get
don't
paid
get
for the features.
you
Yeah.
get paid for the features.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the interesting thing with the AI, and I would say I have went back to adopting this, and it's funny you say that, of like, why didn't I write the tests, or why did I get off the bandwagon? Because I'm one person going, I'm spending just as much time writing the test before I write the feature.
That's right.
What is that? Output.
That's
Well,
exactly
now
what it is.
I can now just let the AI, let the agent go like, no, I want this feature. I don't care if you write the test first, then the feature, or the feature first, then test. I really don't care, but I want the test.
That's right. That's right. And it has to pass.
Yes.
Like that's your criteria on it.
Now,
Yeah.
I will say, we did talk about this. I personally hate when vibe code is the blanket statement.
Yes.
I definitely think there are people who are vibe coding.
Hmm.
My argument for the ones who are doing what I would consider vibe coding, probably, again, someone's going to complain, but probably not a developer or a programmer or an engineer or
Yeah.
whatever. They're just somebody who's like, sure, agent, do the thing, do the thing. And I'm just prompt, 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 stuff comes out.
Hmm.
That is vibe coding, in my opinion, but you don't have really you're coding. That's it. Like,
Yeah.
you're not developing, you're not thinking solution architecture, you're not thinking extensibility and scalability and security. And I mean, like, you're just, I'm vibe coding.
Hmm.
But then you take, people who have the experience of doing this by hand, give them these new tools. I'm not vibe coding. I am
No.
AI assisting throughout my phases of development, and I'm spot checking it as I go. And even if I do give it a prompt and it gives me something, and then I test it, and then I make sure it integrates, I make sure it's dry, I make sure it's going to be safe, it's secure. Like, I'm doing so many other periphery things beyond just letting the agent go and here's some code.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And like you get to the point where you kind of learn a structure that lets you do this faster. And so, I mean, I have a it, of course, I want listenership for your podcast, but I really hope that my buddy doesn't listen to this episode because he asked me to help him out with with a little side project he had, and he's like, "Hey, can you help me, build out this thing?" He's like, "I'm super slammed or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, let me take a look at it." And I'm like, "Okay, give me like maybe 10, 15 hours to knock this out." And then I got busy. I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "Ooh, well, okay, let me try this." So I went to Claude, tell Claude, hey, listen, I want you to create a requirements markdown file. I want you to create a PRD. I want you to create a set of phases in a to-do list, right? Phase one, phase two, have
Mm-hmm.
multiple tasks in each one that logically make sense. Give me all those documents, have them cross-reference each other, and that's your output. And I will say their newest model, I think Opus is the right way to say it. It
Yeah.
is spot on for doing stuff like this.
Oh, yeah.
And so gives me that back. I plop that into an empty folder in Cursor. Build phase one does its thing. Build phase two does its thing. I think it was 7 or 8 phases total, right? And I'm letting that run while I'm in meetings and everything else and whatnot. It built it in like 45 minutes. And I'm like, I look at it and then I go and I take a look at it from like a software engineer's perspective. I'm like, okay, this looks pretty good. Everything works and everything's right. And I ship it over to my buddy and he's like, well, that was really quick. Like I didn't expect it until like next week or something. And I'm like, yeah, I feel really bad, but I'm still going to charge you 10 hours for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well,
but it's this huge thing that can like accelerate your productivity, right? And I think a lot of people see that, especially take it back up to like the company level. So a lot of people see like, oh, whoa, that 10-hour project took 45 minutes. That means a lot to the bottom line at my company, and that doesn't matter if you're a dev shop, a big corporation, whatever, right? But one of the things that you see that that everybody's kind of struggling with right now is they want to go fast, they want to do these really great things, but they don't necessarily understand what they need to give to AI or let AI automate for them, right? So when the let's pretend fictional C-level person comes down and says the operations department needs to be 25% more effective, and the only way they're going to do that is through AI. Okay, great. Who on that operations department understands these are the processes that we have that take the most time that we can give to AI? Because if not, it's this shot in the dark, and you've got these just random folks like shooting out different ideas. And look, some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to work, but if you don't have that like cohesive plan of what is this going to be, you're going to you'll see some uptick. You will, but
yep.
then over time, people will start to fall back to their bad habits, and that's where I go back to like it's a cultural thing. Like you've got to get people to understand if we go this way, you have to stay this way
Mm-hmm.
until we decide it doesn't work.
I think that's the palpable fundamentals here that I think are interesting. Take that operations team analogy, because I think that one's great.
Mm-hmm.
Gets you away from, oh, that's the tech team and the development team.
Sure.
So sure, they're doing it. Like, go to the operations team or the finance team or anyone. I think that if you can't sit down with the problem, let's say you are, if we're going to go with operations, so you're the COO.
Okay.
If you don't already have a point of view of where there is the inefficiency,
Mm-hmm.
how do you even know if you're solving an
That's right.
inefficiency just because I slapped AI on it?
That's right.
This to me, and then again, bring those people back into it. Well, why is it inefficient? Have people, dare I say, get lazy in some of their day job who start to go like, oh yeah, this manual entry of this thing is my job, so that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I think there's a whole psychological aspect of so many people tie what they do into who they are.
That's
So
right.
you get this inextricable, if you take away what I do, you're taking away a piece of who I am. And I think that's some of this fundamental problem of where that, what are you taking away? But we're creatures of comfort and habit. If you give me a thing and that's what I do, most people, I don't know, there's obvious exceptions. They're just gonna go, fine, that's what I do. You pay me well for it. It's what I do. Oh, wait, you want me to not do that and I gotta think hard again? Ugh, I
Yeah.
don't know.
What is this? What
I
is
don't know if I
this?
want to do that.
Yeah.
But I liken it to exercise. If you haven't been exercising and you start exercising, it's quite painful.
Yeah. It's gonna hurt a bit.
But once you get into the habit, not to say that exercising doesn't keep you sore, but you start to feel the actual benefit of it because now you're flexing that proverbial muscle again between your ears of going like, oh, I got to do like interesting problem solving and I got to think about solution architecture for my department, my area of expertise, whatever my domain is. And that's why I think even in the operations world or finance world or non quote unquote tech department, the leadership has to come in, but know where there's the inefficiencies so that they can then apply the right solution to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But AI, and this is not even just an AI problem, to be frank. I think this is I'm just going to blatantly call it technology. Let's just kind of give it a huge ambiguous term. Technology is not a magic salve that we're just going to rub on a problem and ta-da, it's fixed.
That's right.
My opinion on technology is that if you have a problem and it's not applied well, that salve actually is going to exacerbate the problem and then really put you in a world of hurt.
Yep.
So you
You know,
still have to come at it correctly.
I love your workout analogy because it made me think of something here. And you know, you're right. If you haven't worked out in a while and you start working out, you get sore, it hurts. You're like, oh, this is terrible. But then you get to that point where you get in a routine and a habit where, and maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment, but like you kind of chase that a little bit. You're
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, if I'm not sore, like then I'm not doing it right.
Yeah.
So like, what if that translates into this fictional operations team, right? Like, what if we're saying, okay, we're going to make your brain hurt a little bit because you need to think of new things and ways to innovate. You get a couple successes under your belt, and then now they're craving that brain pain, I guess is what
Mhm.
we'll call it, right? Like they want to go after that, and it really goes back to like you have to find a balance between how do you make your teams more productive now and how do you build an organization that is going to be AI first in the future, right?
Right.
And there's like growing pains in between there. And I think your workout analogy is spot on for that.
Do you find I don't know, you may have told me and I've since forgot. I don't remember how quite big the company you're at is, but do you find this to be a size of the thing matters here? And I ask that because, you would have to believe a 3-person startup, they're all wearing 40 hats anyways, and they're banging away at everything, and they're not sleeping, but they've got a different culture, they've got a different mentality, they've got a different hunger. They are already working out and striving that next hit, that next
Yeah.
pain, no gain. We're ready. But you take it to I won't even go huge enterprise. I mean, I think that's the move a continent problem. But let's talk, big business. I have likened it to the difference between, from a business point of view, and the agility, not agile from a development, just the
Right.
agility of the company. A bigger company is like a battleship, a smaller company is like a speedboat.
Mm-hmm.
They can both get to the same place, they can both turn, but turning a speedboat, we just go. turning a battleship, we got to prep and plan and get ready and make sure there's not other things we're going to take out beneath us. And so that adoption takes a little more time. But I find that we're dealing with this. There's the time to adoption, but then there's this, I don't know, maybe it's the fear, but it's that fear, but we got to get it integrated now. And consequences be damned in some cases. And I think that's almost a bigger conundrum. The bigger the business, they're like, we got to get it in now or we're going to be left behind. But that causes, I mean, dare I say, the chaos.
I think you're right. It's kind of a relevant question, I think. So I was back in November. I was at a startup that was acquired by a larger company. So the startup was, call it 30, 40 folks. When we started doing an AI transformation there, and let's call it late 2024, early 2025, we were able to adapt a little bit quicker for essentially all the reasons that you just said. The mindset was a little bit different. We were the speedboat, right? We were easier to turn, but there was still resistance. There was still lack of understanding. There's still all the problems that I think we see and that we talk about. And then post-acquisition, we're now a couple hundred employees, so less than 1,000, right? So bigger company. The same problems still exist. I would say the percentage is smaller overall, right? Because there's more people. You got kind of scale factors there. But looking at trying to integrate things is significantly different at a larger company than at that startup, right? For the exact reason you said. It's a battleship. You have to turn it. There's processes in place at bigger places that when you come from that startup world where you can do anything and like you just ask for forgiveness to the like bigger world where there's process and you have to ask for permission, like that can make a lot of folks' heads spin if they're not used to that, and it can also hinder some of the agility, to use your definition of it, that you see when you're going around and trying to make changes or bring in new technologies or more generally bring in AI into the company.
Now you mentioned it earlier, culture.
Yeah.
I mean, I fundamentally believe culture makes the company, period. I mean, I don't even care how big you are. I think the culture makes the company. It's what gives it the vitality for people to want to come into the culture. It's what once people are in the culture, they don't want to leave the culture. Even when they leave the culture for whatever reason, they loved it so much they want to re-implement the culture somewhere else. But I think culture at a company is everything for its survivability. Don't get me wrong, revenue is important and everything else. But I mean, if all your employees quit or it's a horrible culture, or you just beat everybody down, even your reputation may make the market not want to mess with you. So, I mean, I think culture is an important thing. But I think if you couple the culture and one of the aspects, because you also said this earlier, you have to always be learning.
Yeah.
And I think that's a thing that I don't know that it matters what role, what title, what department or division you're in. Like you have to be evolving, and I'm not going to get into a literal argument about evolution, but I do think it is a evolve or die kind of concept. I mean, I used to work with a guy. We were all moving. I mean, to give point of view, like this was a company that we came in, it was like VB6. We were in the middle of a VB.net transition when the .net thing came out. But even in that, we all kind of saw the proverbial writing on the wall that like we should go ahead and start migrating to C# and F# for some of the stuff we were doing. It was a Microsoft shop, obviously. So
sure.
We're like, we don't even want to stick in the VB side. Like there's some things we want to do and move over to this other area. And to that, we even started updating infrastructure. We had DB2 that was then on like Microsoft SQL 98 R2, and like there was like a lot of old stuff. They're like, no, we want to get over to like SQL 2012 because it's opening up like functions and some other things, like all these just like little nuancy things. But I mean, literally, like if you discount him, like 99% of the company was like, no, let's go embrace this change. Like this is where we go. Had one guy, older gentleman, won't say his name. I loved him dearly. He was a great guy. He was like, the way I wrote SQL still works. the way I write, VB, he did at least do the .NET jump with us. He's like, the way I write my VB still works. So why change?
Mm. Yep.
Ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm like,
That's right.
yeah, but you are not looking. And I mean, I would almost argue the cultural shift we were doing, because we were all like, oh, we want to embrace the new because it's
Mm-hmm.
going to open up opportunity. I mean, to give even a little more context, this was a company that was compiling exes in order to ship them all over the place for internal use. And we were like, why aren't we on the web? Like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
Like, the product we're using doesn't have to be a packaged up piece of software that we literally ship to our offices in China,
Yep.
like over a Teams server, but like we didn't have to. I'm like, let's just move to the web. Ta-da, done. None of them had been writing web codes. They're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, it's not that big of a shift.
Yeah.
But that was the thing. Like, we culturally decided, like, no, we're going to embrace the new and the different and go towards what's going to make us more innovative. But we had the one guy.
Yeah.
Well, guess what happened to the one guy? Eventually, I mean, he'd been there for a real long time. So I would put it was not so much he was fired as much as maybe time for you to retire.
I'd
But
like to say promoted to customer.
yeah, yeah.
So.
But I mean, that was the thing. Like, he just was like, what I've got works. And I'm like, I didn't use it with him. I should have at the time, but I was like, this kind of goes back hearkening to even the education side. I'm like, no one's teaching you Fortran anymore. No one's
That's right.
teaching you COBOL anymore.
That's right.
I don't even know that they teach C. I think they might still be teaching C++, maybe.
Yeah, there is C++ in the curriculum, at least that my son's taken. He's got some C++ in
So, I mean, and as they should, because so many of these languages are C derivatives anyways, but like, they're teaching C++. They're not teaching these older things. And why? Because no one in the market is building Fortran applications and COBOL applications and C applications, and we aren't using punch cards. Like, it evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few instances. I mean, there's one here in Tennessee. The company has a AS400. They are running a giant Fortran application, and they have two guys who their whole job, because they're super, super, super senior Fortran developers, but there's not more Fortran developers. And it's like, eventually they will be gone. Or, I mean, if we want to be morbid, I mean, they just will die. They're humans. So eventually they will be gone.
They're on the clock, right?
And the company at least had the foresight. This is how I got brought in helping them at the time, to go, we're going to have to start migrating. And they realized they were processing trillions of dollars of transactions a day. So they're like, this isn't an overnight transition, but they were building a middle system and then an end system to go like, but this is going to be the transition path to newer technologies. Why? Because we're on dead technology, and the people who can even support it aren't going to be available.
Yep.
Now,
Well,
one could maybe make the argument that, well, AI probably knows Fortran, so let it go nuts. But I mean, how long do you really want to deal with that?
Yeah. Well, and to take that back to the culture thing we were talking about fear, right? So why are you not going to move off of AS400? Well, this thing runs everything, and like I guarantee somebody at least one time said, well, we're afraid if we move it, everything's going to break, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it all goes back to fear. And then your guy who said, well, this is my code. It works. Like, why should I change? Afraid of change to a degree, right? Like it all comes back to fear. And I think that's where, from a cultural perspective, anything and everything you can do to dispel the fear actually has a proportional relationship to your adoption rate, right? Less fear, more adoption.
Yep.
You're talking about evolving a bit. Like one thing I really like about I go back to the Overclock Accelerator program where I do the instruction there. As part of that, I went through the class, and I went through it back November, December, so just a couple months ago. Okay, went through the class as a student first to kind of get the feel for it, saw what it was like. First class I taught was in January. It started in January. It's still going on. The curriculum for actually tonight's lesson, because I'll teach tonight, is actually way different than when I took it 3-4 months ago, just because of all the changes in the ecosystem. But that group sees that in order to stay up to speed, you have to evolve, right? Now go back to our startup and big business model. So this is obviously a startup. that's doing this education. But when you go into a big business and you kind of have your own, learning and development teams or your own cultural teams, people operations teams, whatever their label is at your organization, you have to understand that whatever you're teaching and distilling down to your folks has to change and has to evolve. And we are well past the point where you go into the company learning management system and everybody clicks next, 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 and
Oh yeah.
takes the 5-question quiz and they're done, right? Because
Oh yeah.
we all know that we pay a lot of attention to that.
Oh yeah.
But we're past that point, and we're definitely past that point when it comes to how we teach companies to engage with AI and how you use it to transform.
Yeah.
If today we have a conversation about AI transformation, and then a year from now we have that same conversation, like that's wrong. Like there's got to be
Oh
evolution
yeah.
in play there.
Well, I think that I love the LMS thing too, because that's an interesting transition on the aspect that I think there are still some plausible reasons to do the whole like, hey, send your trainer off, let them get trained so that you train the trainer and they're going to come back and espouse something for the group. I mean, there's still
Sure.
probably some fundamental areas, but I think when you're talking about a thing that is changing at the rapid pace with which AI is changing, I think the train the trainer model to come in and train the groups is antiquated because they can't keep up and keep going back. They're going to be spending an inordinate amount of time learning what's changing.
That's right.
And to that point, it's not generic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like just going, oh, you just need to know how to use, chat GPT. I'm like, well, okay, like, what's that real use case to me, to my role, to my job, to my functions that I do daily? Well, that trainer spent probably their career being a trainer, not a developer or a comptroller or I mean, again, I don't know, let's quit making up roles, but all these individual specific, roles who go like, well, if I give you this magic tool AI, how does it help you? How can the trainer come tell you how you need to be using this tool? So I think this is one of those times that as a company, and I don't know that it matters how big or small you are. Well, I mean, if you're real small, it matters. But
Sure.
if you're a company of any size, this is a thing that has to happen both ends, top down, bottom up,
Mm-hmm.
because top down has to embrace it in order to ensure that cultural shift and that cultural change and that mindset of we are going to evolve. We are going to be a group of learners, and they have to keep espousing that. You're talking about saying it till they're tired of hearing it. That is just a leadership 101. You say it 7 times, and then if they can maybe repeat it back, you say it 7 times more till they are so tired of hearing it that they're like, it is now ingrained in your head.
That's right.
That is rote repetition is proven to work, but that's the company pushing. But at the bottom up, I have to figure out how I can apply this tool to my function, my area. And you and I, who could be in completely different areas, could be using the same tool, if we're going to generically say AI, but for 2 radically different purposes.
Yeah.
So we have to know how to use it for us specifically, in the top down going like, but we're going to use it. And I think that's the thing that has to meet in the middle.
Yeah. Well, and the middle is actually a really good segue, right? Because you're talking about top down, bottom up. I agree with that. But I also think there's left to right. So, picture a team of like 10 people. If only 8 people are adopting, well, what's happening with the other 2, right? Because that's going to cause friction between the 8 and the 2, right?
Yeah.
In multiple ways. I think that there's a really good example I've seen of this, especially when it comes to sales teams, right? Because think of your traditional sales cycle. It's pretty common across all the products, right? It doesn't matter what product you sell, is what I mean. But then go into real estate, right? And real estate's this kind of like black box of being able to sell. But you heard of Ryan Serhant, right? Out of New York. He's got I think he's been on a couple of reality TV shows. But he's a
Yes.
real estate sales guy. He's got a lot going on. He's got a technology startup that's spun off of his real estate company. And you can go to the website and look at this. And I love what he's done, because think about salespeople. All they want to do is sell, 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 right? They don't want to go learn something new. So he's built an app that his salespeople can have on his phone, give it a couple pictures of the listing, the address, maybe how you want to describe it, and it does social post, marketing post, gets everything formatted to put into, I don't know if they use MLS in New York, but whatever the real estate listing system is, like it gets it all formatted with just like a couple taps on the phone. And so
Mhm.
now what you've done is you've taken away the barrier of you have to learn how, like what AI is. You've essentially said, hey, here's an app, here's a tool. It's going to help you in your job because it's going to make you faster,
Mhm.
right? And that's what all these real estate agents want to do. They don't want to spend, 8 hours a day writing up all their listings. Instead, this little app can do it in 10, 15 minutes, right? So what can they do with that other 7.5 hours? Well, they can go get more showings. They can maybe close more deals. They can do all this other stuff, right? And so when you get into that mindset of here is a tool or an app or a set of tools, like whatever it is that you're delivering to your teams that will directly impact your job and make you more efficient. Well, now you're looking at you're going back to some of the things we talked about, right? Like they can go after that brain hurt, or they can, be more efficient, have more free time. A lot of folks, like I know this is bad, but like, and because I do it too. A lot of folks work right through lunch because they're so busy, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a
Yep.
thing, and like that weighs on people's morale. But like if you could, even if at like the highest level, you could say, hey, if you adopt this AI tool that our company has built to help you in your day job, you can not work through lunch, right? And I know that sounds horrible and trite, but I guarantee you would get adoption off of that because it goes back to the culture,
I was gonna say, think about the cultural shift that you get out of going like, no, no, no. I want you to take a break during the day,
Yeah,
refuel your body, step away from the computer. Like that's a cultural shift. It's
100%.
getting
Yeah.
pushed by the company because most of the companies, ironically, and I think the Silicon Valley culture is, it's horrible. It
Mm-hmm.
is. What does it say? The 996. Like you're just
Yeah.
work, 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 work. Stay at the office, sleep at the office, eat at the office. Like it's a rise and grind, like all that. I'm like, don't get me wrong, I get the startup culture, and I have a
Sure.
handful of my own startups, and I rise and grind a little more than I would like. But you know what I'm getting to do and I choose this. I'm getting to rise and grind and do more with the
Mm-hmm.
AI. I don't even have to be, let's say, myopic, but I don't have to do one thing. I can actually try a handful of things now for me as the entrepreneurial side of what I want to do. That's just what the AI is affording me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other irony, though, for me, and my wife could attest to this, not so much the lunch. I am probably that same, glutton for punishment working through lunch. But you know what it did afford me? I stop 5 or 6 p.m. where I
Like that.
used to work 9 to 10 p.m. I've had some nights work to 2 a.m. just because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I got to get it done. I got to get it done. I can stop confidently 5, 6 p.m. and give my family time back. Like I
Yeah.
can now be present. Like that's a massive shift for me. Love
Mm-hmm.
it
Yep.
because I don't have to be banging away at the keyboard. I'm just getting my thoughts. And now the code is kind of coming out at the speed with which I can think it out.
Mm-hmm.
So that in itself, I'm getting to shift. Granted, it's not my work culture. I'm There's a whole other podcast we could probably do. Like I'm pretty fanatic about how I want my team to work and take breaks and be present because I want them to take care of themselves.
Right.
I have that emergency on an airplane kind of mentality. Like if you don't take care of you, you can't take care of others. So
That's right.
that's kind of like the rule we do work. But I kind of was like, but do as I say, not as I do problem because I was the one who was working all the time. Well, now this affords me to be spending more time with my family. I love that.
Yeah. To say that another way, and I would definitely in your situation, and then and probably in like individual employee situations after a company goes through a transformation, do you think it's fair to say that if you implement AI properly and you get it set in your day to day, that it gives you the power of choice, right?
Mm,
Because you get to choose to take your lunch now, right? Where you
yeah.
didn't have that choice prior. You choose to stop at 5 o'clock because you know that there's no consequences now because you've got everything handled, And I think if you could, again, going back to a cultural mindset and maybe how you position or put this at your own company is if you can tell people that they can choose how they handle their day, Like I think that's a huge cultural shift from call it big box corporation of America today.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I think actually there's a whole argument that could be made that that is really the whole point of AI.
Hmm.
You get to choose what it's doing.
Yep.
Because again, this is, I think, some of the stigma that people have got to get out of the way, anyways. AI is not autonomous.
That's
You are
right.
telling it what to do, you're choosing, which brings me back to, and we didn't talk about this, I don't think, and I'm not going to make the whole, I'm not going to tangent too much, but I have 6 core things in my employee management kind of core fundamentals of how I look at it. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose correlated to your role, title, and pay. I want to
Okay.
keep those 6 items, as I say, generally in balance.
Makes sense.
I could tell you my whole metaphor of I mean, I quite literally, like, I have it drawn out of like a coin on a table and a whole thing. We go through that one day, might be worth talking about later. But the reason I mention that, autonomy. I want you as an individual worker to feel that you have the autonomy to work on the parts that you want to work on at the time you want to work on it. Now, my company, we're all remote and I don't really care when you do things. I mean, if we've got a client meeting, we got a client meeting, but in the generalities, I'm like, work whenever you want to
Right.
work.
Yep.
I don't care. Just, get stuff done and
If
we're
it's
good.
if it's getting done, we don't care. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I want them to have that autonomy. But you add AI, that choice. That's, I mean, what is autonomy? Choice.
Hmm.
Well, if you add the AI on top of it, well, now you should be able to flex that choice muscle even more because you now have the ability to get the thing that we need to get done faster. And you shouldn't feel that hidden pull to go, oh, I need to work through lunch, or I'm gonna have to get up early and I gotta work late. Like, and I'm not saying those Herculean things don't need to happen on occasion. I've
Sure.
always said they should, but they should be that Herculean spikes, because Herculean effort all the time is just effort.
That's right. That's right.
So Herculean effort here and there, it's all, we all have dealt with it. You got that late night failure, that, early morning push or whatever. Yeah, fine. You got your moments, but the norm shouldn't be that. It should be, I work a normal day. I get paid. Again, it's role title pay. I get paid a good wage to do the thing I do, but it goes back to like my developer conversation. But I'm not paying you because of the code output. The customers are paying us because of the code output, because that's what they're experiencing.
Yep.
So that's, yes, don't get me wrong, it's valuable, but they're experiencing that code output because you have the autonomy and the freedom to master a thing that you wanted to master, get really good at it, choose how to solve the problem with or without AI. Didn't change anything other than maybe speed, maybe even some elegance of the solution. I mean, that's another thing that I think people kind of overlook. AI can create some very elegant solutions, but at the end of the day, if you're doing the vibe code thing and you're just going like prompt and launch, you aren't paying attention what it's doing, which means you don't
That's right.
understand what it did, which means you don't understand the product. And I don't really care what the product is and what department you're in.
Yeah. And I think, to me, I think that's where maybe some of the developer fear comes from. Because for the longest time, developers at their core, or software engineers, whatever you want to call them, we've been problem solvers, right? There is a problem of build this thing, do this thing, make this thing happen. And we kind of had this like secret magic that we had learned how to do. It was all in our brains, or, back in the day, it was on Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
But yeah, now. And so when you look at that, when AI comes into play, and the vibe coding, and anybody can do it and jump in, I think that's where some of the fear comes from, because it's like you're taking away what made me special, quote unquote special, or my special way to solve this problem. And really what we need to do is understand that uh, you know there is going to be a shift. Yes, I think more folks are going to be quote unquote in the code than they have been in the past. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the shift for the software engineer is, yeah, you're going to be writing code through agents, or through some type of AI tool, but you're also going to be managing those, right? Deploying
You,
like a fleet of those to move
that's
out.
the magic word.
Yeah, manage is the magic word, because then you're also going to be responsible for what they put out from an architectural and a code perspective as well. So your job doesn't go to zero. It's just, it allows you to focus on these other aspects of the role. Because, okay, think about it. You're a software engineer, you're cranking out, you got 15 magical story points or 200 story points, depending on how your company, defines one, if you're an
Mhm.
agile shop, right? And you're cranking that out and you're trying to get through it in your sprint. And now I am, as the leader of that team, I'm asking you, well, hey, have we thought about the architecture of this? Have you code reviewed all these other things? Have you, worked with this peer over here to see what they're doing, so that way you guys aren't like stepping on each other's toes, solution wise?
Mhm.
AI gives you more time for that, right? It lets you become, in back in the day, there used to be this like trend of like almost artisan or like craftsmanship in the code. Like the
Oh yeah.
code needed to be beautiful, right? And if the code was beautiful, then anybody else could read it and come in and pick up and figure out where you were.
Yep.
We don't necessarily need that anymore, right? And look, to a degree, I'm a bit sad about that, because I do like the artisan mindset of it.
Yeah.
But I think where that lives now is it shifts over a little bit. Like you become an artisan or a craftsperson around the architecture, the full on solution, the integration between multiple systems. It just shifts. That's all this really is. And I think if folks can realize that it's not a shift to zero, but it's a shift to the left or a shift to the right, I think
Mhm.
a lot of that fear is going to go away. And take that to any role.
Hey,
Take it
sure.
to like a project management role or an operations role. Same type of shift, different task involved.
I think it's funny the thing you say there, because this has been one of the things that I've said. We didn't change the paradigm. I was a developer. I ended up becoming a manager. Well, what was I managing? Other developers.
That's right.
I mean, I'm less time on keyboard, but now I'm more time, I don't know, solution architecting or project managing or whatever, facets of your new management role is implying. But it, to me personally, it's no different. I said this in another episode of like, they're just your digital employees.
That's right. That's right.
And if you treat them that way, and this is why I think agents are important differentiation to just saying AI, because AI is interesting and it has its place, but the agentic side of it and giving it specialty and giving it focus, it's a digital employee. I can
Oh,
have my
100%.
architect and my DevOps
Yeah.
guy and my code review and my tester and my develop. Like, you have these agents at your disposal and you're just using them accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's, for the sake of, we're coming close on time here, so I'll pull us to this. I think that is one of the big shifts, both from management and both from the employees. And as we kind of started early on, fear comes from a mind state. Uh, the excitement comes from a mind state. The what can I do in the creativity? It's all a mind state. And I think that is one of the key points of this whole thing with AI and all else. It's really a mind and a mental shift.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're scared of it, so excited about it, all to, I mean, I think all of it, it's about your mental perspective of it, and get that mental perspective right. And we're going to be able to take this tool at our disposal and use it appropriately and not have the fear of it.
That's right. That's right. I agree with that too. I think it definitely goes to the point of, oh, this is one where you're going to want to edit because I lost my train of thought. I'll pause for a second. Got it. So, okay. When you're talking about tools there, I am reminded a bit, and it's a bit of a stretch to go to tool here, but I think you'll see where I'm going. Back in the late, I don't know, 1800s ish, when steel production got way more efficient. Like they were producing steel, and then they realized, oh, we can do this a lot better, a lot stronger, and a lot faster. The fear there at the time was, oh, I make steel for a living, I'm going to be out of work, right? What actually happened is that's when we see the boom of skyscrapers, all the big buildings that needed more steel, right? And so your work actually got more important. And so I almost wonder if this is a tooling and a trend and a time where we're going to see that pick a role, doesn't matter what your role is, but using AI with that role draws you more towards, hey, there's now more work because of all of the things out here versus the fear of less.
Yeah. I think that's quite the apropos point of view on it. Like there is the fear today, but I think if we stop worrying about it and look towards what it can do,
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll see the opportunity in it.
100%.
All right, well, Justin, we're about at time. Give you just a second. If there's any closing remarks, any thoughts you want to put in there, or if there's anywhere you want to give people the ability to reach out if they so desire, go for it.
Yeah, I mean the easiest way to reach out to me, I think, is through LinkedIn. You know, I'm there. This is what my face looks like on LinkedIn. You can find it.
Yep.
You know, I'm always open to having, you know, conversations with folks. If you have questions about this type of stuff, I'm if you can't tell, I'm decently passionate about it. So
Yeah.
I will gladly talk your ear off if you want to reach out and talk about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on and another episode of Bridging the Gap.